Once again, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Joseph Atick, Executive Chairman of ID4AFRICA, and I'd like to welcome you to Plenary Session 1, which is being simulcast as livecast number 39, directly from the ID4AFRICA 2023 event village in Nairobi, Kenya. We will start this session with a brief setting segment followed by a policy panel There is a delay in the clicker. We'll start this segment with a brief setting segment followed by a policy panel. There's a slight change in terms of who's on the policy panel. I'll explain it in a second after we finish the scene setting. And then we will have 6 country case studies and a panel discussion focused entirely on identity verification. I want to clarify that in the first segment, I will be giving a high-level overview of some of the key business and policy issues governments can expect to encounter on their next phase of their identity journey. So it's a high level, watch out for this, watch out for that type of discussion. These are the same issues upon which we built this year's program. So throughout this scene setting presentation, you will notice references just like this in the form of post-it notes directing you to the specific sessions and segments where the issues are explored in greater depth by the various speakers. So I'm not going to go deep, but I'm going to go broad. I'm going to show you all the issues that you need to be paying attention to and where can you go to learn more about them. Okay, so let's get started. I wanted to start with Africa's identity development journey. Quite often people ask me, where is Africa now and where it is going? Over the last decade, Africa's identity development journey can be best characterized as one of primarily establishing identity through enrollment of the population into national registers. So steadily, the continent has continued to be making the invisibles visible. Some countries are faster than others. You will hear about it today and tomorrow. Most have resorted to biometrics for establishing a uniqueness, and all have gone down the path of issuing unique identity numbers. That's almost a universal thing. While the job is actually far from being complete, and the momentum is building, continues to be building in national population registers, there's a new shift. A new shift in priorities has now become visible on the horizon. This unmistakable shift is towards enabling large-scale identity use. In fact, it's no surprise to you that digital transformation is creating an unprecedented, broad-based need for digital identity to empower an ever-growing number of use cases. So the rapid growth in demand is leading to a point where digital identity will become indispensable, and as such will become like a public infrastructure, essential for existing in society. So that's why we're talking about identity verification or identity as DPI. But the march towards identity as an infrastructure is neither linear nor one-dimensional. It's very complicated, in fact, as you will learn through the AGM. Nevertheless, this journey inevitably starts with what is needed to enable identity use, which means it starts with identity verification. Identity verification is the next phase of everything we do. This may sound like an easier task, but when we examine the underlying requirements, we see that identity verification at population scale is actually more challenging business process than establishing identity. Let us see why. In order to see why, let me compare the two. This is establishing identity. You can resume establishing identity with really two tasks. You better do them well. Enrollment, you capture limited fields, limited data fields, under control or supervision of trained operators. And then you better do uniqueness. You better do deduplication, for the most part, biometric deduplication, which has become a commodity capability. Now, this is naturally a centralized process, which means at most you aggregate data into central databases from collection sites. But it's not millions of collection sites. It's maybe a few thousand at most. And it's done through a limited scope. These are trained operators, people that capture data. However, when we look at verifying identity, there are actually 4 pillars that you have to make sure you do very, very well. First of all, you gotta do one-on-one matching, which binds the individual to the identity credential, mostly through biometric authentication. And you have to do it basically using a variety of mechanisms. It's not just using a device at the enrollment center. So one-to-one matching is often not that simple because it could be done in any environment. Second, this is a very data-rich process. You might say, why is it data-rich? It's data-rich because transaction, it generates use data, use exhausts, which get into everywhere. Significant privacy and security risks. The third one, which is very difficult, and many of the authorities know this, is the high user expectations. It's like Wi-Fi in the networking hall. A minute Wi-Fi goes down, I hear about it. I get a lot of people telling me, the Wi-Fi is down, the Wi-Fi is down. Yes, it's being worked on. So the expectations for high availability, for one-to-one verification, the user experience, frictionless, simple, unsupervised, 24/7, versatility. I want to do it with my device. I want to do it with somebody else's device. I want to work it online. I want to work it offline. And then the fourth one, this is a complex ecosystem with many different actors. You have identity providers, you have relying agencies, you have service providers, you have device makers, you have consumers. It is also a process where the public as well as the private sector get involved. So you could see that digital identity verification is actually a complex business process, and you have to really, really get it right. So how do we build identity verification platforms? I want to keep the discussion within a framework where credentials are issued centrally. I'm not going into the world of self-sovereign. However, I will be bringing in decentralization in a second, but still I will insist that credentials are issued centrally by Identity Civil Registration Authority. So within that context, what are the options available to you to build identity verification? In fact, there are so many different methods for identity verification, but I can classify them into 4. All methods can be classified into one of those 4 basic models. I should emphasize in the real world, the different models can coexist. So it's not true that there's only one unique model, but many countries will have to adopt multiple. And then, of course, which ones become the preferred ones are chosen by the consumer. So let's start with the simplest one. Number 1, this tells you more about this in that session. So what's the first one? The first one is the electronic identity card. This is the most classical model. The credential, maybe biometric template, are digitally signed and loaded on an electronic chip. You issue the card, the individual carries it, relying parties use it to establish the identity for KYC, know your customer, onboarding into a program, but you can also use it for transaction identity verification. So services are linked easily to EID, even offline. The trust model derives from the confidence the relying party has on the security of the credential, so it's secure printing, secure signature, and in the legitimacy of the authority issuing the credential. This is a baseline scenario. It is privacy respecting. Many countries have been doing it for years. Today you will see Ghana, you will see Morocco, you will see Tanzania have been adopting this baseline with tremendous success for their service delivery models. What are the disadvantages? It's slightly costly to issue and to maintain, requires infrastructure for reading the card, does not interface seamlessly with a purely digital world, so it leads to complex integration issues. In other words, it's not born digital. It's electronic, but it's not really born digital. Nevertheless, it's a very good step forward towards a hybrid model that can start immediately. So also, privacy concerns in developed countries are leading to a resurgence in interest in such platform for identity verification. Give people the tokens and let them deal with it. So that's one model. The next model, and you can learn more about it in these sessions. The next model is the platforms, is the mobile identity, the mobile ID. In this model, one can transfer the credential to a secure digital wallet on a smartphone. Can do that directly from the card itself through the NFC interface. In principles, individuals should be able to transfer it to the wallet of their choice and not need to ask for permission to do so. Advantages of this model: the credential is the same as the one issued by the central authority, but it's transferred to a more convenient medium. Not much effort is needed to go from EID to MID. Disadvantages: requires a smartphone, which means only 1 in 3 individuals in sub-Saharan Africa can use it in the short term. It is also a two-step process. You have to have the EID first, then the MID. Nevertheless, I like it. It's a great step forward towards embedded identity verification. You will see Morocco talking about it. You'll see Indonesia talking about it. You'll see others who have made that transition very nicely. So we talked about EID as a platform for identity verification. We talked about MID as a platform for identity verification. The third one is purely digital. Purely digital identity. Here, we need to deliver authentication services to a unique identity number without needing a physical credential. This is the classical Aadhaar-style digital identity, or at least the Aadhaar of the last decade. It is a form of identity over the cloud, and it relies on a centralized database for authentication. Advantages: inexpensive, relatively easy to implement. Disadvantages: so many. And they include the fact that it requires highly available connectivity, cloud infrastructure, but more significantly, it is a centralized database authentication. So it could raise fears of surveillance of the population. This centralized model, therefore, might be viewed as a threat to privacy unless you do something more about it. And so tokenization was invented to deal with this negative side effect of centralized authentication. India and Nigeria have both successfully created decentralized mechanisms to tokenize the unique identity number and to turn an inherently centralized identity verification into one that enjoys some of the advantages of decentralized verification. So the surveillance of the population is no longer easily possible. We will learn about central identity verification and tokenization from Nigeria today and tomorrow in 2 presentations. They really did a great job. Nigeria did a great job, so do not miss their presentations. Beyond tokenization, we can do more. But why do we need to do more? Many reasons. While tokenization prevents third party from aggregating and transactions and profiling the individuals, aggregating the transactions and profiling the individuals, the central government can still, in principle, see the transactions. I believe privacy advocates, and many are in this room, and rightly so, will demand a framework where the government does not even see the transactions. So how do we move into that realm? So this is the reference where you can learn about purely digital. And so let's move to the fourth type of identity verification. And the fourth type of identity verification would be decentralized digital identity. We still need to attribute to a unique identity number a virtual credential in a format that can be downloaded or received securely from a trusted government site and stored in a secure digital wallet. It could be on a mobile, on an embedded device like an Apple Watch, or a DigiLocker, or even printed in a 2D barcode. The act of receiving one's credential should end the interaction of the individual with the authority. That's it. I got my credential. Now I should be able to use it. Once you have the credential, you should present it anywhere for verification without having to be matched against a centralized database. Here I see tremendous promise of the W3C verifiable credentials. These can be integrated into verifiable registries, as you can see, which can include distributed ledgers. We're going to learn a lot about this this evening, actually, the final two presentations. So the whole verification process will work without further involvement of the authorities. So check out PS3 tomorrow, PS2 session 4 tonight, and PS4 session 4 tomorrow, PS4 session 1 tomorrow as well. So there's a lot here. So what are the advantages? Sounds like a utopian choice. The ID authorities establish identity, establish uniqueness, issue a credential, the consumer ingests it. What's the problem? They are still complex to implement and require a sophisticated, digitally savvy population. You might say, is this self-sovereign? No, it is not. It is not self-sovereign because still the government is the one that's issuing the attestation. And so that brings me to the point of digital identity as, pardon me. So before I move to the next point, I have to alert you that all these schemes that I'm talking about here, with the exception of the centralized scheme, rely on PKI, which means identity authorities, ICT authorities. You need to establish solid PKI in your country if you're hoping to produce identity verification. So, of course, we can talk about quantum computing and the vulnerabilities that will happen in the next 10 years, but for now, PKI is the only method we know for how to build verifiable identity verification systems. So, for me, digital identity should not be any different from any other credential. For example, I have a PhD because Stanford University attested that I met the requirements and I got the PhD. You're allowed to drive because the DMV gave you an attestation. Similarly, if you exist and you're unique, the identity authority has the responsibility to give you an attestation of existence and uniqueness. And that attestation should be carried just like all the other credentials in a wallet or in any other mechanism. So digital identity should not be something very exceptional. It should be part of all the ensemble of credentials that we need. So, however, you have to pay attention that all credentials viewed as attestations need to be bound to the individual. So it's not enough to issue them. You also have to facilitate the binding to the owner. And the most common way is biometrics. And then, of course, the fastest growing type of binding is the selfie face authentication. So pay attention to face recognition. Face recognition is not going to go away. It's one of the most powerful ways to bind the individual to their credential. It's having incredible growth in the US, in Australia, in Singapore, and Europe, driven by the private sector and local government. You'll hear a lot more about it today. And then UID. UID, India, has begun using face with great success for including the elderly who have fingerprints that have been wiped. So PS4S1 tomorrow, you will hear a beautiful presentation about how face is helping inclusion. But I have to alert you that here I'm talking about face one-to-one, which is face authentication, which identity authorities and all other organizations that need to give attestations and credentials need to embrace, figure out ways they can embrace. I'm not talking about this evil, which is face surveillance. Face surveillance is one-to-many, and we need to make sure in the process of allowing one-to-one, we are not enabling face surveillance. Okay? So let me make a side comment. Why has face become so accurate? In fact, you know, I was involved in the invention of face recognition in the early 90s. So over 30 years ago, face recognition existed. It became so accurate because of one thing. It's this. Artificial intelligence has now taken the accuracy of traditional algorithms 3 orders of magnitude, 4 orders of magnitude. We're talking about phenomenal accuracy, 11, 12 layers of neural networks, which make a model, it's a deep learning model, a deep model of face. Just like ChatGPT has given us a model for language, now we have a model for face. How many in this audience has interacted with ChatGPT? Please raise your hand. Wow, you see? So you can imagine the power of AI. It has created the revolution that has changed language, but it's also changing biometrics. So there is no doubt AI is a major disruption in identity algorithms and also in identity management practices. You will see that tomorrow in PS3. While accuracy is no longer a problem for one-to-one matching, etc., there are other serious problems that I beg the identity authorities to pay attention to. I'll give you 2. 1, so these are the references. 1 is algorithmic bias. AI learns from data, and data often reflects societal bias. So trained networks could perpetuate and amplify these biases. So you have to make sure that when you're procuring a face algorithm, that the vendor has demonstrated that they've dealt with the bias of the algorithm, or otherwise you will find certain minority groups that are being disadvantaged because these AI algorithms are biased. Second is the whole topic of digital manipulations or deep fakes. How do you know that the person who's verifying themselves are actually them or not an AI-generated copy that speaks, that looks, that moves, that acts just like them? This is not science fiction. It is here today. Luckily, there are things you can do. So if you're an identity authority trying to use face, you need to build as well liveness, multi-factor authentication, smart detection of fakes. You need to build risk models. You need to continuous authentication monitoring. There's a whole slew of things. So it's not just simple. The business of authentication is not that simple because we live in a world where it is much, much more complicated because of fakes. Now, another area that you have to embrace as authorities is the subject of digital wallets. You give credentials, you give attestations. Those need to be managed somewhere. Where are they going to be carried? They're going to be carried in the wallets. In my opinion, the wallet is the most important development for identity verification after the invention of biometrics. So plan for it, embrace it, and make sure that you're not locked. You're able to choose different wallets, or you're able to create interoperability of wallets. So this field is very much in motion, and you're going to be learning more about it this evening. One additional thing, in fact, look at the statistics about how many people are going to be using wallets very shortly. So we talked about AI, we talked about digital wallets. That leads us to another thing, which is identity verification is not a standalone process. You should never think of identity verification as something that you do and it's done. It has to integrate with other things, such as payments, such as data sharing. And so that's why tomorrow you're going to be learning about digital stacks and how the stacks are actually the best and most important method for you to develop your identity verification. We are going to learn about digital stacks tomorrow, but we are going to come back to that in future AGMs. Okay, so to try to wrap up, I'd like to give you my 4 recommendations for identity authorities about identity verification policy recommendations. I think the most important thing for identity authorities to be doing is to define their scope of work. What is their role in society? What's their role in the government when it comes to identity? No one can contest that establishing identity is the core responsibility of identity authorities. But the question is, what should they do after that? Number 1, focus on identity proofing and provisioning, which means you have to be the best in putting your investment in enrollment, deduplication, unique identity management, issuance and maintenance of official identity credentials in multiple formats, as attestation for unique existence. Second, offer KYC identification or verification services. KYC allows third party, whether it's health, social protection, etc., to ingest and learn who the person is, KYC. Third, enable third party, private or public, to do transaction authentication. If you are the only one that's doing transaction authentication, you will fail, because the scalability and the SLAs, you are not going to be able to respond to all the demands. Fourth, you need to be aware of standards and for collaboration and interoperability. I'm giving you a set of standards and activities that you should be paying attention to. So you might say, Dr. Atick, you're telling us not to get into the business of authentication transactions. What's going to happen to my revenue? I argue that revenue should not be coming from transactions. Revenue should be coming from appropriations of budget. Identity is a public good, and governments need to pay for it, need to build it into the budget because it saves money. Finally, the role of the private sector. They are here, they are everywhere, they are in your country, so do not move away from working with them. Give them the ability to ingest your credential and let them integrate it into decentralized frameworks and other frameworks. And finally, no discussion about digital identity is complete without emphasizing the need to digitize civil registration. And here I will make a pitch for the AXA workshop, which is an African initiative for Africa related to the development of an interoperable asset that integrates with digital identity, but also digitizes the practice. Okay, so I hope I've given you sort of a brief overview of some of the issues that you need to be concerned with as you build your identity verification. I would like to now move to the next segment, which is, we'll take questions during the next segment. We're going to start with, in fact, we're going to start a panel discussion, bringing in 2 principal secretaries representing the Ministry of Interior and Ministry of ICT. So I'd like to call upon the Principal Secretary of Immigration Services and Citizen Services from the Ministry of Interior and National Government, Ambassador Bitok, if you don't mind joining me on the stage. And I believe we have a Okay, I've just been informed that the Minister, Cabinet Secretary of ICT, Mr. Owalo himself, will be joining us for this part of the panel. So perhaps we can... Which side? Yes, actually, I'll take this side if you want to take the other side of Mr. Owalo, Cabinet Secretary. Okay. Mr. Owalo is the Cabinet Secretary for ICT, and ICT is an important partner with the Ministry of Interior in the development of the ecosystem for Kenya. So I understand he has just arrived, which is good news, so we would have a more meaningful conversation. If not, I understood also the Principal Secretary was here. He's going to bring him. Okay. Perhaps while we're waiting, we could entertain one question from the audience, with the caveat that once he enters, we have to...
Dr. Atick, question.
Yes.
On your talk earlier, you talked about trends in the identity industry. Can you advise the audience on resources available to them to learn more about those trends? So the question was, you talked about a lot of trends in the identity industry right now,
right,
and key policy advice. Are there any educational or reference materials you would point the audience to learn more about them?
Yes, of course. As you know, there are many resources available. The ID4AFRICA Livecasts, the World Bank ID4D, Open ID Foundation has produced, and of course, Gail, you will be giving some specific websites and references where you could learn more about these. There is a lot of material that's available. What is important is how do we make this material easy to ingest and easy to access, because many, as you know, we are no longer like we used to be in the past where we would read huge reports. You need to be focusing on learning in a way that's adapted to our times. So a lot of people actually find watching a YouTube video that tells them exactly what the issues are, etc. I think the minister has arrived. The Cabinet Secretary has arrived. Yeah, so please feel free in your segment later today to provide specific websites where Open ID Foundation. Welcome, Cabinet Secretary, to the stage. We're very pleased to have you with us. You're arriving just on time.
Good morning. How are you?
Good morning.
Good.
Thank you. Please have a seat. It was perfect timing. So this is a policy panel engaging two thought leaders in the country who come at it from slightly different perspectives. I want to start by looking at a country like Kenya, not just Kenya, any country in similar situation. I find many countries in Africa have similar situations. It's a country fairly developed registration practices, and national population registers are well developed, high coverage. The question is, what challenges do you see in transitioning from the classical registration, which is based on registers and physical, to a purely digital world, the digital identity? So we can start with Cabinet Secretary, get your perspective on the challenges to transition.
Oh, thank you very much. I think the fundamental challenge that we are going to face from the very onset is how to manage the transition. effective change management, because there's going to be a paradigm shift. People are used to manual processes carrying their physical identities, and now you are saying we are not going to have any manual identity, forms of identification anymore. So there is need for, from the very onset, effective stakeholder engagement, massive sensitization of members of the public. If this is not going to be done right, then you run the risk of not carrying the people along with you. So that is fundamental, that we need to have adequate levels of sensitization so that we get stakeholder buy-in.
Is this education? Is this public campaigns? How do we achieve that?
Public campaigns.
Public campaigns.
Involving all the relevant stakeholder segments in a massive sensitization program.
So that's number one issue, sensitization of the population so they understand the transition. Ambassador Bitok, would you like to add to this point?
Yeah, thank you very much, Joseph, and welcome, Cabinet Secretary. I want to give a rejoinder to what the Cabinet Secretary has said, that one of the major challenges that we are facing now is trust issues. When we go digital,
right,
people are then used to physical cards. And then when you have them digital, there's element of trust on the system. So I think, as the CS has said, we need to do a lot of education, a lot of confidence building among the population so that they believe in this system. In addition to that, I want to believe that one of the other challenges is that not every person has a smartphone and can access the digital resources. So we really need to put in a lot of investment on this in terms of infrastructure, in terms of the superhighway. I think that will also be able to help to be able to provide these services even more.
Actually, hold on to that thought, because I want to come to the Cabinet Secretary on this very same issue. In fact, how do we ensure that digital identity is not limited to the ranks of the elite? How can we make it inclusive and accessible? And what is your government doing to ensure that the ordinary person can access digital identity?
Thank you. Inclusivity and access is imperative. If you don't facilitate access to affordable, reliable internet to all parts of the country, then you run the risk of rolling out a digital identity, but it becomes an exclusivity of the elite living in the urban centers. So first, we must have wider connectivity of internet up to the rural areas. In fact, this is one of our areas of focus as government. We are rolling out 100,000 kilometers of fiber to ensure that those parts of the country that hitherto are not connected get adequate supply of reliable and affordable internet. Then on the other issue of, before even you come to access, there also has to be a corresponding level of digital literacy.
Yes.
People need to be digitally enabled. So an ambitious, intentional, conscious digital skilling program is also imperative so that people get adequate level of skills, ICT skills, to be able to consume or to optimally utilize the infrastructure, the ICT infrastructure that you are putting in place by way of digital identity.
Do you teach that in school, or do you create, how do you get that?
Digital skilling should target all facets of the community, starting with members of the public and also public officials, those officials who are in public service, relevant segments of government.
Are you establishing some level of certification for public servants to say you need to have these ICT skills?
Oh yes, depending on the functional domains where they are domiciled, we'll have customized training, digital training programs. But fundamentally, members of the public have to be adequately empowered by way of digital skills.
Okay.
Then the next thing there, within that space, before we lose it, is the access to smartphones.
Device.
The device itself. It's not just access to the device must also be affordable.
Right.
That is actually a void in the market that we must fill. We have already noticed in government that a substantial proportion of the Kenyan population domiciled at the lowest echelons of the economic pyramid do not have access to cheap, smart-enabled phones. What we are doing as government is to partner with the private sector to ensure that in the not too distant future we have got a local assembly of smart but also cheap enabled phones, smart enabled phones, which will be rolled out in the market at a unit cost of about $40. This is work in progress, and by end of July, we will have the first set of smart enabled phones in the Kenyan market.
This definitely will be a revolution in inclusivity and access. So that's music to my ears. I'd like to go to Ambassador Bitok with another challenge, which we have not covered. Ambassador, you are in an organization that underneath you, there are so many identity databases. Are we able to harmonize all of this data? And how is this challenge being addressed by your organization?
Okay, thank you very much, Atick. Okay, before I answer the issue of integration of the databases, I want to say that one of the other major challenges is cybersecurity. There are too many hits or attempts to compromise some of our systems. So one of the emerging challenges in digital identity is cybersecurity. So it's an area which I want to believe the developers, the development partners need to pay particular attention, because as we transition towards digital identity, cybersecurity becomes central in all this, in the entire ecosystem. Now, coming back to the question you have asked about databases, currently in my State Department, we have databases like 5 different databases that are running. We have a database by civil registration, CRVS. We have a database by NRB, that is a National Registration Bureau. We also have another database by immigration. We also have another database by the Refugee Affairs. We also have another database by IPRS. So we are now in the process, and we've begun with the assistance of ICT through the minister, to integrate these databases into one master population register. It is not easy, because some of these databases do not necessarily have very accurate data. Some of them are not very compatible. So we have begun the process, because for us to succeed in digital identity, we have to have all these databases collapsed into one master population register that is going to be the database for everybody, where everybody comes. If you want to know your customer or other eKYC, that is where you check your authenticity. If you want to, for example, the government has announced the rollout of 5,000 services. The railroad for the 5,000 services is IPRS. All the people accessing online services must hit IPRS for the identity to be confirmed before they access a service. So, and the way the system is right now, he said that there's a challenge because we're only using the ID number. We have not gone to biometrics. We are now transiting. When we fully go digital, we would want to see a scenario where every person requiring digital services, or rather e-citizen services, use their biometric to confirm their identity.
Okay, great. So we want to have the audience now to pose questions. So I want to open it up. Please, ushers, provide microphones to anybody that raises their hand. I'll recognize them. But in the meantime, let me sum up for you what we have heard so far. Even in countries where you have a highly developed civil identity registration systems in place, the transition to a digital world, to a digital identity, requires overcoming many challenges. Sensitization of the population, building trust, ensuring that cybersecurity is part of your agenda, ensuring inclusivity by making sure that the infrastructure of ICT is there, accessible in the rural areas, ensuring that the handset devices are affordable so that no one is left behind. In addition, the harmonization of your databases. Digital identity relies on the ground truth, which is your population registers. So that's already a lot of challenges that you have to overcome to ensure the functioning. Anybody would like to ask a question and join this conversation with our distinguished guests before we continue? Raise your hand. Tell us what organization you're from. Any questions? Yes, there is a Hadija, the lady behind the gentleman, and then please provide the phone and stand up, please. Please provide the microphone. Hadija, yes, first.
Thank you, Dr. Atick. Mine is not a question, but a comment.
Okay.
I've had the emphasis on communication, and what I want to at least inform the panel there is that communication will never be enough. From the experience we've had, you can have all the channels there, but it has to be a continuous process. It can never be a big bang communication exercise. So it has to be continuous. Because from experience, even with the harmonization we've done with the telecommunication sector, you open your phone, whether it is a digital phone or analog phone, when you have a call or you are going to make a call, there's always a communication on the need for you to have the national ID and to harmonize it. But surprisingly, a lot of people will still tell you that they don't know what is going on. So communication is continuous, and then you have to utilize your traditional system to be able to communicate to the citizens. The churches, the mosque, the traditional rulers, area council, and what have you. Thank you.
Okay, we'll take one more and then we'll continue. Do you need any announcement? Any announcement or no? No, okay. One more person. Yes, Sambo.
Yes.
Please state who you are and your country, and then state your question. Or we can only have one. The microphone, please.
Thank you, Dr.
Actually, the Cabinet Secretary would like to comment on the communication. Please, go ahead now, before we ask the second question.
Thank you very much. I agree with was she Hadija?
Yes, Hadija from
I agree with that
Nigeria.
fully and exclusively, to the extent that we need an elaborate communication framework as a critical success factor towards operationalization of the digital identity. From the very beginning, if you don't get the communication element right, then this initiative is going to be stillborn. People need to understand why there is need for a departure from the norm to the digital identity perspective. They need to understand what it will entail. They need to understand what will be required of them. They need to understand the end result. They need to understand the benefits. Unless and until you convince members of the public that the benefits of a digital identity outweigh the risks, then you run the risk of not carrying them along, and this change program will not be successfully implemented.
Well said. Okay. P.S. Sambo.
Thank you very much, Dr. Atick. My name is Mhatso Sambo. I'm the Principal Secretary in the Ministry of Homeland Security in Malawi, and I'm the head of the national registration. I know that there is a misconception about the registration. One, from my own thoughts, is that the digital identity is conceived as a security thing or registration thing or probably digitalization. So combining all these three is probably one of the issues that we talked about, the public trust. So I wanted to hear from our colleagues from Kenya, what exactly have they done or they are intending to do to ensure that these three, registration, security, and the digitalization, are enablers for the public trust. Thank you.
Registration and digitization, you're right. Wait. Would you like to address that?
Okay, thank you very much, PS, Principal Secretary from Malawi. For Kenya, we are, as I said in my opening remarks, we are now transitioning from second generation ID to third generation ID. And that the third generation ID is what we are calling digital identity, or in another name, UPI, unique personal identifier. And what we have done, we have been trying to build consensus with the civil society, with the stakeholders on the acceptability of this concept. And I want to say, our thinking is that we can rely on the current databases to be able to transit into a digital identity. So we are not planning to do fresh registration. We are going to utilize the resources which are already there in terms of the databases, the names and the biometrics which are already in the system to be able to create digital identity. And that's why I'm saying we are going to bring together all these databases to create a master population register of all persons living and working in Kenya, including civil registration, immigration, refugees. We want to have a master population register. So in terms of registration, I want to say that we are not going to enroll afresh because we believe we have adequate data. For example, as we speak now, we have 31.5 million registered Kenyans in our database for NRB. So what we need to do is just to clean that data and be able to transit it into a national digital identity, that is unique personal identifier. A little bit on security, I want to say that we are also working on cyber security infrastructure supported by our security apparatus. And I want to confirm to you that e-citizen platform, which is now running the e-citizen services, is a very secure platform, secured by the government security apparatus. So we have a very serious security backup from the back end to support the digital services in the government platform. So overall, I want to confirm that as a country, we are set to transit from the second generation to third generation, or rather to digital identity. And that is why this conference is coming at a very, the best time for us. It's coming at a good time for us because we are in that transition, working closely with the Ministry of ICT to help us create the necessary systems and structures in terms of technology to transit to the next level. So thank you very much.
Would you like to add?
Let me say something on digitalization. One, a digital identity is a function of the level of digitalization in government. You will not be thinking of going the route of digital identity unless and until you have got adequate levels of digitalization in government. So first of all, we must think of moving away from manual processes to digitalized processes. In Kenya, as government, what we have done is that we have embarked on an ambitious program of digitalizing all government records and also correspondingly digitalizing all government services. Within a span of 3 months from when we took over as government, working with the Ministry of Interior, we took over the e-citizen platform, which is now a fully fledged government facility. At that point in time, we were only at the level of 350 government services aboard that technological platform. As at this morning, we have managed to onboard a total of 6,200 government services electronically out of a possible 7,800 government services that we have mapped out and can possibly be digitalized. So what I'm saying in short, ladies and gentlemen, is that it cannot be the other way around. You are thinking of digital ID before you digitalize. Digitalize the services first, and then you ask yourself the question, with this level of digitalization, do we still need members of the public to physically visit government offices to consume the services? The answer is no. So you need a digital identity to enable now members of the public consume government services from the comfort of wherever they are. That is the nexus between the two. digitalize, then go the route of digital identity.
Digital identity.
Dr. Atick, allow me just to
Yes,
add
please.
something to what the CS has said.
Yeah.
In addition, Mr. PS, in our preparation, we are now in the process of reviewing the laws. You know, all these databases were created by different laws. Like CRS has their own law, NRB have their own law, Immigration have their own law, Refugee Affairs has their own law. What we are now doing, we are trying to consolidate and create a law that would help us transit smoothly from the old traditional second generation ID to a third generation digital identity. So we have to ensure that the legal framework, and from experiences, we looked at many countries, and we realized that we cannot succeed to transit without a proper legal framework to support this process. Thank you.
Let me just add something little on that. You see, we have got various sets of, we have got many policies, we have got many laws to operationalize those policies, but they have to speak to each other. So as we embark, if they are inconsistent with each other, then you run the risk of having a problem. So this process of digitalization, and by extension of the digital identity, must be anchored on an enabling policy, legal, and regulatory framework. That is a critical success factor. Then a brief comment also on the level of exposure to cyber insecurity. You cannot stop digitalizing because you run the risk of exposing yourself to cyber insecurity. Yeah?
Exactly.
That is retrogressive thinking. What we need to do is to ensure that as we digitalize, correspondingly, we are also building around that digitalization process an elaborate risk mitigation framework. In fact, in this regard, what we have done as government is to establish and operationalize the Office of the Data Commissioner, which is charged with the responsibility, the functional mandate of ensuring that we have got adequate levels of data privacy and correspondingly also data security. We have also put in place a multifaceted team consisting of integral segments of government to ensure that as we digitalize, they are correspondingly analyzing the emerging trends of cybersecurity globally. What are the trends? What are other countries doing so that we can benchmark with global best practices in cybersecurity and customize to meet our own situation?
Excellent. So I want to take on another theme and another topic which many of you as authorities in Africa have contacted us, shared with us, and that is how do we work together in terms of a whole of government approach to digital identity and digitalization. As you see here, it's not an accident that we brought in the two main organizations that are involved in the digital transformation and in arriving at digital identity. So I want to ask you, both of you, how do your two ministries work together without creating parallel structures, and how do you cooperate? What's the framework for collaboration?
You know, structures are not built around individuals. Ideally, in a perfect situation, structures should emanate from the work that needs to be done, the functional mandates that need to be achieved. In government, the output of one facet of government is the input of another. That means we must speak to each other at all levels, and we must work together. That is the approach that we have taken, and we are pursuing this digital identity issue from a whole one government approach.
So how does that reflect from your side, Ambassador?
Just to give a rejoinder to what the Cabinet Secretary has said, is that, for example, we have this project of onboarding services into e-citizen platform. We are working very closely with the Ministry of ICT and the National Treasury and the security agencies to ensure that we all on the same page, so that we have avoided the issue of a silo approach. Because some of these issues, like digital identity, they are cross-cutting.
Yeah.
They have a component of money. They have a component of technology. They have a component of security. So it cannot work to operate as a silo. So that is why we have come together to be able to support this project. Thank you.
But again, a critical success factor in this regard is effective leadership from the top echelons of government. For our case, We are lucky that we have got a president who is providing effective leadership, leading from the front as far as this digitalization agenda is concerned, bringing all the facets of government and reining in everybody to do their bit with the ultimate objective of achieving the advisory results. Yeah.
So it's very important that the tone from the top does impose a whole of government approach and does impose the vision. Speaking of that, what is Kenya's national vision for digital identity? What are the timelines? What can citizens of Kenya expect in terms of national digital identity?
We envisage that by the first half of next year, all Kenyans would be on digital identity. We are pursuing this aggressively because, in our own view, we must transform Kenya into a digital economy. We want to run a paperless government on one hand, and overall a digital economy. This cannot be achieved if we don't have a digital identity. So it is something that we are determined to pursue to a logical conclusion.
Ambassador, do you feel you're ready?
I think the cabinet secretary has said it well. We are actually on transition, and I said it earlier. And I think we are, from where I sit, we are ready. And we are already on the journey. The journey has begun. And as he has given the timelines, I want to believe that soon and very soon, Kenya will transit into a digital economy. Thank you.
Before we take more questions, so please, ushers, spread in the audience, I'm going to tackle perhaps a sensitive subject, but it's very important to tackle it. I actually give Kenya great credit. Give Kenya great credit because people think that success is a destination which is a straight line. But in reality, it's not. When we arrive from point A to point B, often we discover that we have to return back, try something else that didn't work. And I have to say, and this is maybe the elephant in the room, we cannot ignore it, you've attempted to do digital identity through the Huduma number program, I said it, but you quickly realized it was not the right approach. So the country had the courage to accept that it needs change. So my question for you both, what lessons have we learned from the Huduma number experience that other countries can benefit from?
Let me clarify from the onset that we are not, as government, trying to reinvent the Huduma number. The Huduma number is different from the digital identity we are talking about.
Explain, please.
The Huduma number's intention was to put together a population database that was ICT enabled. Our interest here is not to develop a population database. Our interest is to ensure that there is a technological avenue through which government can determine who is doing business with. That is the rationale of the digital identity. So we are not reinventing the Huduma number together with the attendant baggages. No, we are not doing that. What we are saying is that each and every Kenyan needs to be on a digital identity to be able to virtually consume government services from the comfort of wherever they are without having to physically visit government offices. If we go that route, we are going to facilitate efficiency and effectiveness in service delivery in government. We will be able to re-engineer our business processes across the board. We will be able to bring in more people into tangible or gainful economic activity, widen our tax base, enhance the level of domestically generated revenue, raise enough revenue to be able to settle our external debt and have surplus for purposes of both development and recurrent expenditure.
Professor, Ambassador, what's the status then of this?
Thank you very much. Just to give a rejoinder to what the minister said is that we are not reviving Huduma number. However, there are lessons, as you have asked, which we learned in the process of the failed Huduma number. One of the lessons is that we do not have a proper framework for data protection. So during the Huduma process, the government was able to create the Office of the Data Commissioner, which is now anchored in law that guarantees privacy of the information or of data of Kenyan citizens. Also in the process of Huduma number, as you may all be aware, is that it is the Kenyan people, really, who rejected Huduma number. And therefore, we cannot revive it because, as you are aware, it had too many litigations because of lack of public participation, public consultation, And the bill could not have sailed in Parliament. That is why I'm saying it was not accepted by the Kenyan people. However, we have critical lessons which we can still disseminate, maybe in another forum because of time, to some of our friends, some of our other friendly countries, because they are good lessons for them to learn in this journey of digital identity. Exactly. Thank you.
Well, let me also mention something with respect to the lessons learned, which is now informing our very process of pursuit of a digital identity. One of the pitfalls that befell the Huduma number was inadequate sensitization. People were told we are introducing Huduma number. The rationale, the justification was not well registered in the minds of the Kenyan public. So people were suspect of their intentions. Yeah? So that is one lesson that we have learned, which we are embracing moving forward, that there has to be adequate levels of sensitization of the Kenyan public. In fact, even before you think of sensitization, there has to be adequate stakeholder mapping to be able to determine the stakeholder segments that you need to bring on board and tag along through this journey of digitalization of the digital identity. The other issue here is timing. The timing has to be correct. In my view, one of the challenges that befell the Huduma number is that it was introduced towards a general election. Right. So people got suspicious of it. Is this process tied to the forthcoming general elections? As government, we are introducing this initiative at a point when we are fresh in government. Yeah?
That's a good point.
Yeah? That is very, very imperative. It is not tied to politics. We need it for purposes of pursuing our development agenda. Yeah. And we have said unequivocally from the highest echelons of government that we will not do any politics up to 2027. So we are not tying this process at all to politics. Yes, we want to divorce our development programs from the political programs. Political programs as government, we will pursue in 2027. Right now, we are thinking of service delivery to the people, and it is in this vein that we are pursuing the digital identity. So timing has to be correct.
Perfect.
Don't wait until towards a general election and you want to introduce it here.
Would you like to add?
Yeah, just something slightly different from the lessons.
Please.
Is that there are quite a number of equipment materials which were acquired during the Huduma, which we feel as government can be utilized.
Reutilized.
Even moving, exactly, because we are not starting from scratch.
Yeah.
So there are some of the materials which we think we can be able to salvage, to be able to help us to move quickly towards digital identity.
Exactly. Anybody wants to have a question? Actually,
I have the mic.
In the hat first.
I have the mic, yeah.
Actually, the hand that came out on the left, we're going to be very limited because we don't have much time. So please stand up. Please. He got the advantage of the hat, so I could see that. Yes, absolutely.
Maybe one thing I want to say also is the issue of trust as a critical success factor in digital identity. The person leading the initiative must win the trust of the people. If you are leading such an initiative, but your history is a monument of inconsistency and contradictions, then you run the risk of losing the people along the journey.
Yeah. Okay, please. Turn on the...
Ok, je vais intervenir en français. Peut-être le docteur Atick va servir d'interprète. Je suis M. Djela, le chef du Centre national de production des titres identitaires du Cameroun.
Which office? I'm the head of the National Center for Production of National Identities in Cameroon.
Is it National Data Center?
Mais comment ça?
Identity. Okay. Cameroon, like the NRB. Okay.
Les préoccupations du Kenya.
The concerns of Kenya remind us the problem that we have in Africa. Therefore, we need to migrate towards the digital identity. But I would like to ask a question. With the theme, they talked about the theme of public infrastructure. Therefore, I'll wait for them to put on the headsets. Kindly repeat your question. I was saying that the theme of this conference, are you getting English? Cabinet Secretary, Principal Secretary, you okay with English? The theme that we are discussing is about all the African countries, because most African countries have finished the first generation and we are transiting toward the third generation. This is the digital. Kenya has raised the problems that concern all of us, but when it comes to the theme, I can see public infrastructure and digital identity. As Kenya thought in this migration, has Kenya thought about public and private partnership? Because when I walk around Kenya, I have seen that we have bridges, and I think that it's a public and private partnership that constructed all this infrastructure. Therefore, I'm asking, in this transition towards e-digitization, does the Kenyan government think about the participation of the private sector?
Private sector, and whether would you consider private-public partnerships in moving forward? Merci beaucoup.
We are already doing that. In fact, in our entire digitalization agenda and programs, we envisage that we'll only be able to undertake 52% of our programs. The remaining 48% we are leaving to the private sector. And we have already mapped out the integral private sector participants in this regard. We have had meetings with them. We have agreed on the components which each and every one of those stakeholder segments is undertaking, including clear timelines, expected deliverables, and output indicators. Yeah.
Professor. Maybe to add to what the minister said, actually, digital identity as public infrastructure is really timely. And that we are open to public-private partnership, as said by the minister. And there are many components of this digital identity. There are things to do with the databases. There are things to do with the mobile devices. So I welcome development partners to partner with us, because we have quite a number of components that we can invest on a public-private partnership arrangement and be able to come out. And we have many opportunities. Whether a company wants to propose to do the databases, others want to do the infrastructure in terms of actual superhighway, others may be interested in bringing the gadgets. I think the government is open to those many opportunities. And that is why I keep on saying this conference would not have come at a better time than this.
Yes.
So it is really timely for all of us to be able to use this opportunity to network and get public-private partnership opportunities for investment in Kenya. Thank you.
With this, I'll give the final word to the
Let me
CS.
just give a few examples for purposes of illustration in this regard of public-private partnerships. Let's take fiber as a hypothetical example. If, for example, a private sector entity, company has already rolled out fiber in a given area, there is no justification, there is no rationale for government to also roll out fiber in the same area, because that will be duplicity of resources. So optimality in deployment of resources is imperative in this regard. And that is why we are saying the public must speak to the private sector.
Exactly.
That partnership is a critical success factor. Another example, for example, is the issue of smart enabled phones, but affordable phones in the market.
Yes.
We are partnering with the private sector in the local assembly of the first batch of telephones. We are leaving the private sector to drive it. Another thing you need to understand that overall, from a policy perspective, it is not the business of government to compete in business with the private sector. Based on mandate of government, the business of government is to provide an enabling policy, legal, and regulatory framework to enable the private sector to thrive.
Exactly.
And that's something that we must have at the back of our minds as we move forward.
With that, I would like to thank our illustrious panelists for their insights. We ran out of time, unfortunately. Please join me. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you so much for being with us. Yes. We look forward to continuing to follow your progress and learning from the lessons that you have learned. Professor, Ambassador, thank you so much for all these insights. We are going to have you around with us for the next day or two. So people, if you would like to benefit from his insight and experience, I'm sure you will be generous with them in sharing. But I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Okay, good.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. We're ready to move to the third segment of our event this morning. In this session, we are going to have 6 senior leaders representing their country's identity authorities. And they are all going to focus on their experiences and strategies that they have adopted for identity verification. So as they set up the stage for everybody, I'd like to call to the stage in the order of appearance, Professor Kenneth Atafua, who is the Executive Secretary of the National Identification Authority, NIA, of Ghana. Professor, please join me on the stage. Mohsen Yedju, the Director, Morocco EID Project, la Direction Générale de la Sûreté Nationale, DGSN, Morocco. Please get seated in this order. I'll be here. Engineer Aliyu Aziz, Director General, CEO, National Identity Management Commission, NIMSI, and ID4Africa Ambassador from Nigeria. Tariq Malik was unable, unfortunately, he has fallen ill and was not able to be with us. He's the chairman and CEO of NADRA Pakistan. However, he sent his capable deputy, Mr. Shahriyar Ajmal Khan, who's the head of business development, National Database Registration Authority, NADRA Pakistan, to take his place. Please join us on stage. Rosemary Kisimbo, Executive Director, National Identification Registration Authority, NIRA, and ID4Africa Ambassador, Uganda. And last but not least, Dr. Tegu Setyabudi, Director General, Population and Civil Registration, Dukcapil, Ministry of Home Affairs, Indonesia. Please. Each will speak for about 15 minutes. Then we will have questions, and perhaps a panel discussion. So if you have any questions specific to any segment, please be specific. Please note them and hold them until the end when we conduct the panel discussion. So without further delay, we will call on Professor Atafua to take the stage. And please welcome Professor Atafua, the front and back. Thank you. Thank you. I don't care. Why would I care?
Good morning, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. I stand on the earlier protocols established. It is a pleasure for me to be able to join this conversation on empowering public and private services, the Ghana Card Experience. I'm Professor Kenneth Atafua. I'm the Executive Secretary of the National Identification Authority, Ghana. It is a statutory agency established by law to provide for Ghana a national identification system and a verification system. And I'll be speaking to the empowerment of public and private services based on that experience.
Yeah, you got it.
So the National Identification Authority is set up to perform 5 primary functions. The first is to register all Ghanaians living in Ghana and abroad and provide them with a place on the National Identity Register. It's also to register all foreigners who are permanently and lawfully resident in Ghana, but who are not diplomats or the representatives of international non-governmental organizations onto the National Identity Register. The second mandate is to issue all such persons with a national identity card, which we commonly call the Ghana card. And this card is an electronic biometric ID card. The third function of the NIA is to ensure the accuracy, integrity, confidentiality, and security of the data that it collects and stores. Fourthly, it is to create and maintain the National Identity Register by suppressing the identities of those who exit by way of death or renunciation of citizenship, and to add the identities of those who are born into the society or become Ghanaians by registration or naturalization. And finally, NIA is to make available to persons and public institutions and private institutions that are authorized by law to access the data that it collects. This five-pronged function is performed through a public-private partnership arrangement. That PPP framework is supported by law and is between the National Identification Authority and the Identity Management Systems Limited, a subsidiary of the Margins Group of companies. The private partner has a responsibility of conceptualizing, designing, and building the robust technical system, the back-end system, for the business of registering the person that I have so described. It also has the responsibility of providing the technical equipment and the supplies for all of those that need to happen. Whilst the public partner has the responsibility for enrolling the public, for the citizenry and members of the population who are foreigners, and providing the engagements, the community engagements, the sensitization processes that make these things happen. There are three key components of the national identification system in Ghana. The first is the Ghana card itself, which is a biometric chip-embedded, dual-interface smart card issued to Ghanaians who are aged 6 years and above, and then also the qualified foreigners who are resident in Ghana. Then we have the National Identity Register, the biometric database of all registered persons. And the third component is the verification system, which is a robust platform for the verification of identities of persons transacting business using the Ghana card. And I should say that in Ghana, there are about 17 mandatory uses of the Ghana card. There are about 17 things you cannot do if you are resident in Ghana and you do not possess the Ghana card. This includes such things as registering for your SIM card, or registering to vote, or to pay your taxes, or to have a driver's license or a passport, and a host of other things. And so it is, whilst it is not statutorily mandatory to possess the Ghana card, it is practically necessary or dictated by circumstances that people should get the Ghana card. Takes a while, I'm sorry. So this public-private partnership arrangement has a 15-year life cycle. And it is estimated that within the 15 years, it will generate 1.5 billion United States dollars. And this is to be generated from a variety of services that I'll speak to in a moment, but through the sharing of data with a number of institutions, such as the National Health Insurance Authority, such as the Statistical Service, the Electoral Commission, the National Communications Authority, National Security and National Insurance Trust, the Bank of Ghana, the Ghana Revenue Authority, and the Ministry of Education and the Driver and Vehicle Licensing Authority. It is estimated that through this relationship, we will be able, over the 15-year period, transfer data services to user agencies and earn some revenue from that, provide verification services, provide registration at premium registration centers, household registration, and registration at institutions, each of which attracts a minimum fee approved by Parliament. And then the registration of Ghanaians living abroad, which also brings revenue to the Republic. The update of personal information and the replacement of lost, stolen, defaced, or damaged cars, each of which is to also bring in Parliament-approved revenue at minimum rates, but depending on volume, expected to give us the 1.5 billion that I spoke about. But it's important to appreciate this in context. The National Identification Authority was set up in 2006, but became fully operational with a mass registration in 2008. Between 2008 and February 2017, when the current government came to power, the total number of Ghanaians registered was 4.5 million. Then we had about 2.7 million cards printed, and we had issued 900,000 cards to Ghanaians. Fast forward to 30th April 2023. The total number of Ghanaians registered is over 17.4 million. The total number of cards printed is over 17.2 million. And the total number of persons issued with a Ghana card is 16.2 million out of a population of 31 million. It's also important to look at the different generations of ID cards that have been issued. One is the earlier generation Ghana card was a 2D barcode card that captured 4 fingers, had 2 storage capacity, and no tracking number. The current Ghana card is a dual interface smart card. It captures all 10 fingerprints, iris, and facial. And it has 148 kilobytes storage capacity, 20 of which is taken up by the processing system. And it has a tracking number. There are enormous security features of this dual interface smart card, but I will save the details for the period in conversation. But it is among the highest of its class in the world for any ID card. It is important to then focus on an overview of the biometric verification platform. Here we're talking of the generation of a unique code for compliance and for governance, and ensuring that services and revenues are optimized, that they are efficient, that they are safe, they are secure, they are robust, and most importantly, they are dependable. Now, that dependability is critical. Go back, yes. So we provide 3 types of verification services in order to achieve our objectives in the various revenue categories. We provide applets, and on the Ghana card, there are 14 loadable applets. It's like having 14 apartments within your mansion and being able to rent them out whilst you live in the mansion and enjoy the benefits of the revenue. So on the applet side, we have applets, we have data sets, and we have biometric verification. The applets present a major cost-saving feature for all institutions that are required by law to provide services to Ghanaians. User agencies may use the dedicated space on the smart cards issued to applicants. And so the National Health Insurance Authority, for example, or the Ghana Revenue Authority, or the Social Security and National Insurance Trust, having applets and being able to dedicate that to their clientele. All institutions that provide universal services, such as banks and the telcos, are encouraged to use the applet functionality on the Ghana card to deliver universal access to all citizens at little cost. With respect to data sets, data sets are sent to user agencies to produce documents such as passports and driver's licenses. NIA charges such institutions a token fee for the transfer of the data sets. Citizens don't pay for that. And with respect to verification, biometric verification, this service provides read-only online or offline verification to user agencies. And again here, data is transmitted to the user agencies in real time or through match-on-card activities. As I indicated earlier, approximately 17.4 million Ghanaians out of a population of 31 have been enrolled onto the National Identity Register. There is a population cohort of those aged 15 and above because we believe they will make the most commercial use of the smart dual interface biometric ID cards. Since 2021, over 120 million verification requests have been successfully processed in real time without a single hitch. That is to say, each verification has been conducted within 300 milliseconds, and that is astronomical. It is because we also provide a single, trusted, accurate, and verifiable database. This is a single source of truth. With the use of the ICAO PKID, all international border management authorities can perform an authentication of a travel document and, in turn, rely on the data that is stored on the chip because of the very, very high level of security. We've got both online and offline verification platforms. In the enrollment or registration process, we capture the iris. This has not been activated yet, but stands ready to be activated any day. We've got fingerprint, where we do a comparison of the fingerprint captured during registration to what is stored on the Ghana card or in the database for confirmation of an individual's unique identity number. And finally, with respect to the facial, we do a comparison of the portrait taken during registration to a live portrait of the human being standing in front of the person doing the verification for confirmation of the unique ID number. We have a variety of devices for online verification, and this provides a response in a second. Whether a card is present or a card is not present, we are able to verify the person. So this functionality exists. Then we have fingerprint scanner, where we use a single fingerprint, and we also have multiple fingerprint scanners where we do the traditional 442. We also have a camera with 500 DPI and USB 2.0 with high-speed certified. And of course, we're able to do online, secure, fast connection. There are a number of important functions of the verification devices we have available. We have a biometric login. We are able to upload apps through mobile devices management systems. There is automatic software updates. We have securitized Android 11 OS pre-installed. We have global positioning location that is enabled and an upgrade for card present functionality as well as card absent functionality. Offline, online, facial, and fingerprint verification facility exists, and there is a real-time and attendance functionality. It is uploaded with a PKI to guarantee security of transactions, and it stores results on a device when there is no connectivity. And the device can be erased and turned off to ensure that data is secure when the device is lost or stolen. It is important for NIA to embark on a number of important next steps. The registration of Ghanaians aged 15 and below, and registration of Ghanaians abroad, continuation of registration activities, and registration of persons in detention. The use of ocular inspection is the biggest challenge. We are hoping that people will move on and use data harmonization and integration and abandon the practice of going for identity verification using other devices instead of NIA-approved devices, and to avoid the stale data that they use data that is provided by NIA by upgrading and constantly updating the record. If we do these things, if we enforce the regulation governing the use of the mandatory cards, we will achieve, it is envisaged, public and private sector contributing immensely to the digitalization agenda, and their services would enable us achieve a single source of truth and broader societal acceptance of the Ghana card and a better political society that is inclusive on economic, social, and political levels.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor, for all the progress. Congratulations to Ghana on all the progress you've done. Now we are going to continue with the presentation from Morocco. It will be in French, so please put on your translation headphones if you are an Anglophone and you are not bilingual. Please, Monsieur Yejou.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Atick. The presentation will be in French, but feel free to contact me those 3 days if you need more information about the project. It will be a pleasure to explain everything to you. Alors, la présentation intervient plus ou moins une année après avoir présenté le projet justement.
Moroccan project, ID4AFRICA, that was last year. So I'm doing a small recapitulation on what has been done in the meantime. August 2020, we had the launching of the National Electronic Identity Cards in Morocco, so which had new characteristics, allowing us to have access to new functionalities. And we also need to know that we had already produced more than 15 million of this electronic ID card, and throughout the kingdom, and 37% of the population is already in our national registry. So now that you know, we are told that the national card is one must have it from 16 years. So there we are talking about for adults. We have reached almost 85% of the population in April 2020. So this is where what I shared last year, we launched a platform of confidence in third-party identity and public infrastructure for the Moroccan kingdom. So on this platform, it's inclusive. All the Moroccan citizens who already have a national identity card, whether it be the old or the new one, automatically benefit from a digital identity, and it is secured. It is a secure platform. You're going to see a bit of the model that was chosen by Morocco amongst the models that, you know, Professor explained to us. And it is a transparent platform. We centered this platform on the citizen, on the user, and also the possibilities for him, so that at each point we ask for the citizens' consent to be able to reach their data, so that before we share the data. So the model that was retained for Morocco in terms of infrastructure, you know, public identity. So this is a model that allows for confidence in a third party. So this is digital confidence. Also, it is one of our necessary pillars if you are talking of digitization. And if you're going to have exchange of electronic data. So this platform is there to create a link of confidence between the citizen on one side and also the service provider, as we call them. That can be the government, administration, but also the sectors, controlled sectors like banks and other services. Now, one of the specific items on this platform, this service is based on the national identity card. So that is like the model one that was presented. So this system turns on the use of the national identity card. There is no register. There is no base, you know, database that can be shared or that can be published from this platform. But the citizens keep the data. The data is on the SIM card. You know, they decide whom they can share it with. So the providers who would like to use this platform need to be accredited. They need authorization so that they can have so that they can use the platform, and also to, especially when you're talking about protection of personal data, and they should be accreditable. They should be accredited. They can propose services to citizens. They need to be able to identify themselves using the card, the national identity card. But you can also use many ways to authenticate. Like we talked of, the card in itself is our way of authentifying. It is a physical support, but there is also the facial recognition that we just talked about. There are fingerprints, there is mobile notification, there is SMS, OTP, one-time password, means that are now used on the platform that are used. The objective of this ADGSN is to guarantee the legality of identity of the civility of the Moroccan kingdom. So where the first national card was given, our objective is to use the same identity which is guaranteed, use it today for all physical transactions in Morocco, you know, to have a document, a travel document, a driving permit, and you need an act, you need to present your national the digital identity card. So, and also to keep this identity, the regal identity, the digital one, which also allows use or to carry out all transactions, whether they be electronic or physical. We also saw a bit of the model that was retained by the Morocco, and what are we really proposing? So when we are talking about service providers in Morocco, so just like my predecessor said, we have the certain types of different ways of using it. We have the online and offline mode. We have the off connected that help us to identify and authenticate the person who arrives physically in an agency before an operator in an administration. We also have kits offline that also allow the service providers to carry out this authentication, and it can also have a matching or of prints. How it is done is that the authentication done by card, the card is also still verifiable by the national using that identity card. So the information is transferred immediately from the chip to the card on the person's information. So we have other services that would also like to give other services online or from offline, and where the security is really important. So we need to come up with means to authenticate what we see online. So these service providers need to have access to these services. It is integratable online in using internet, using platforms that we have put in place that are also OpenID to connect. So the online service also allows you to control the authentication of a document. So the data is collected and it is also identified, authenticated. So we are independent of the producers or the readers of the tablets, etc. So we do not supply this kind of material. We simply integrate with the material. We make a choice of what we can use offline. So all we give you is the key and the SSD card that may be used to do the work. For the online mode, the principle is simple. It is a principle of delegation of authentication. So once the citizen has connected to a service, the authentication is delegated through the platform of a third party, and this is what we use on the portal. If you want to disconnect, you need to look for a button. For us, we say you can do it through Google or Facebook. It is more or less the same function. So the platform takes charge of this authentication, carries out the transaction with the citizen, and also lets the service provider of the validation having verified who has died, if a card has been used, somebody who is deceased. For the service providers, the model that has been retained is more simple with integration. It allows for interoperability, and a service provider only has two choices to make once they're integrated on the platform. It is one, the means of authentication. So that can be a choice, and also the choice of the information or the data that you would like to receive using the electronic chip. It is a solution that responds to the needs of the service providers, that is the authenticating the document and the securing and authentication of the card. Then what we call the anonymous ability to really ensure that all the information that is received is on one person. And then we also need digital proof of transactions in case of if legal aspects come up. Examples of usage that we've had or that we have identified is to really ensure the donates. They need to be able to know that the database they are using is reliable, and that the bank account, for instance, the platforms are trustworthy. We have partners in the sectors that want to prove that the person is really alive, and they need to be able to do that online. So there are services that are offered by Sitweb and Navigator, but also using applications on the mobile. So we said that this is a citizen-centered service. So here the mobile application that allows the citizen to identify himself from a distance, and also to manage his data, and also control all transactions that he may carry out. And it also allows to manage the identity, control information that this person would want to see, and also to manage consent, because we only share the information that is necessary and that we are allowed to share, that the citizen has accepted be shared. And if it is online, we also get a message if the transaction can go on or not. We'll have a small demonstration on the platform. So that is a bank application that would like to authenticate. So it is launched, and then there is a digital identity that comes up immediately, and then the application informs us that there is authentication that has been launched, and there is the card that you see. So we can have also a locking. The PIN is needed for the card, so we have found it. So that's a bit very quick, and on the smartphone we can use it to read the card and also to make the necessary verifications. And once that has succeeded, the application closes, and also we send the information that was directly put in. It is sent to the bank. There are other ways of authenticating, so that is what we call out of bank. So you begin from a navigator to get a service. That's an administrative service, so that we can also download a service. You can also click on a button, and you have it explains where the information is going to go to a service provider. And once accepted, we show the different methods of authentication you can selected by the service provider. And there we need to come to the moment where we need to authenticate. So there is my ID, my national identity card, and if the application is well configured, I get an alert on the fact that there is authentication that has been requested for. So this is important. These alerts and the consent is the basis and the principle on which this platform runs. And once this is confirmed, that is, I am the one who launched the authentication, I continue, so blocking the card. So the chip has many ways or the same of blocking, and the rest, like we saw earlier, there is a pin that is needed, etc. And after that, we have signed more than 16 conventions, 9 projects that have been launched. It's quite a lot in 16 months since getting into service. We have signed a convention with the national regulator of the country to be able to use their platform. And we have also, following their demand, requests improved on the platform, but we've also had a number of improvements. We have integrated the initial ID, digital ID, and also the passport, so that they can also use them on the platform for the public identity infrastructure. So each time it is used, the client is sure that the identity is secure. You can have more information on the website, and please, we are here to give you more information. Thank you.
Vraiment, c'est un système étonnant. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. You have really progressed.
For the rest of the session, it's going to be all in English. So anybody who doesn't need the headset, please pass it on to a francophone. I'm very pleased to continue. DG Aziz from NIMSI, Nigeria. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Atick. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My presentation is on building the virtual and mobile identity verification ecosystem in Nigeria. So the word ecosystem is very important, since we have talked about collaboration. And as you know, we have been building the database for the past 11 years, and we have gone through PPP and others too, but it's the ecosystem approach that really helps us to reach where we are now. Okay, so we have built the database, so you need to give access to the database. And on the verification platform, way back in 2015, we have given the banks free of charge to access the database and tell us what their experience is. But we found out that it is the citizen that needs to be empowered. Therefore, we emphasize more on the peer-to-peer personal-based verifications for your house help, drivers, and the rest of them. And of course, we still maintain the enterprise-based verification. And I have 5 different platforms that we built, similar to what my colleagues have talked about, the mobile ID, which we were first in Africa to implement. But we also have the improved NIN slip, so that to account for people that don't have the mobile ID, they can use that one. And of course, we maintain the APIs. And also, recently, we have moved from the EID card that we had before to now partner with the Central Bank of Nigeria and also the National Interbank Settlement System. And the approval just happened on 17th May, that is last week, on my birthday. What a birthday gift, okay? So it is a smart payment card, but layered with identity. Before, when we have an identity card that has payment, then there was a lot of resistance from the banks that we have entered into their territory. But when we adopted the ecosystem approach, then now it's the banks that are saying, no, we need to work together, that when we have built this system, and then the enterprise mobile app. So this is the mobile app, and it has a lot of features. It gives the citizen his own power, and also from the discussion we had in the Tony Blair Institute, apart from quantum computing, is the digital identity that we need to focus on. And the third item is on the wearables. Therefore, the mobile app also now is moving to the wearables, both Apple Watch and the Android wallet passes. And this is again giving the citizen the powers that the citizen requires, rather than enabling enterprises. And the next one, which is the improve need sleep, is for the people that don't have the mobile app. Then they can print a pocket-size improve need sleep, and also it doesn't expire. You can print it the number of times you have, because we outsource it to the citizens to print by themselves. And also, some of the features, like we had no issue date before, but based on the use case of the pension industry that requires when was it issued. Therefore, we added that, because it is a paper-based and it's based on the database, so we can improve it at a go. It's part of the system that we have. And also, that it does not confer citizenship, because if you issue cards, sometimes there's this assumption that you may be getting into some other people's territory. No, but when you work as an ecosystem, then you know that the citizen is the same citizen, whether he's in immigration and the driver's license databases and whatever. And we have moved through also harmonizing these different agencies, and I'm pleased to also inform that most of them are also part of this contingent, because Nigeria is all, as you know, more than 200 million people. Therefore, we are the largest contingent also as part of this system. Then the tokenization, as the chairman mentioned, that we have implemented the OCI API, and to make sure that every citizen have control on the consent of who is checking my own data and what are they using it for. And therefore, you provide your own consent, and we address the data privacy also by making this tokenized base. But it is still, we have a lot of citizens that downloaded the mobile app and utilizing the tokenization, but it's still work in progress. And my new darling, the birthday gift, which is the new payment card layered with identity. This is the sample of our Minister of Communications and Digital Economy. He was the one who presented to the public, and the name is AfriGo. And Afri is for the African, and Go is that we need to move to really make sure that it is a domestic card. It's not MasterCard or Visa card, but domestic. That is domestic to Nigeria, and we are moving forward to connect it with the different African countries. And finally, the enterprise mobile app is to address the SMEs and also the fintechs, the telcos that wants to have aggregated ways of verifying the NIN slip. And so the whole system is that there have to be consent from the citizen, and also we have to address the data privacy. And this tokenization is the one in action, and there's also a presentation tomorrow by my colleague to address that. So tokenization, consent, and also encryption, which has been driven by the public key infrastructure that we have, and it is the proof of verification, and that we believe that the tokenization is really the real game changer. And the proof in action is that it has the verification sheet with the transaction IDs, with the timestamp, and who has done with the verification. And that is the sample from the telcos as we did the SIM-NIN linkage, and that is what the outcome of that SIM verification. So many sectors are utilizing it, and this is the time that I can also take to introduce that and acknowledge that the chairman of the board of NIMSI is also here with us, and all the agencies identified there, Population Commission, Immigration, Joint Admission and Matriculation Board Examination, the Federal Road Safety, Nigeria Railway Corporation, most of the banks and the fintech and the telcos are all here. And so far, we have done more than 330 million verifications and authentication. And every blessed day, we have over 800,000 verifications that have been happening. And the history, just a brief history of that, like you can see, way back in 2015, we opened it up for the private sector, principally the banks. We have 7 million records then. Come and utilize it. If you find that it is useful, then we can talk about the business aspect. Again, so we utilize the Google and the Yahoo model, whereby they provide a free email for you and then get you to then sell some other things to you. As you can see, then when we reached 10 million transactions in 2019, we were celebrating, but the COVID came in and then it drops. But you can see immediately by 2021, we started the SIM NIN linkage, and then the numbers just grew up. And there are many policies that came into existence so that to provide this growth. And one of it is the gazetted mandatory use of the NIN, revised national policy on the SIM card registration, the passport applications and renewal, and I have my passport controller around. He will tell you the experience, the pension contribution and access, and also the joint admission and matriculation, whereby the registrar insisted that since there is NIN, you must have the NIN to get to that, and also identification of senior citizens, that is those people that are above 60. Way back in 2017, when we met in Namibia, we understood that citizens that are above 60 are being provided for and managed by government, and therefore, but you have to prove by your own identity. So that is what we are also doing in Nigeria. And of course, there's nothing that doesn't have challenges. Most of it have to do with control at the site, at the service points to manage. Some people allege that their SIM linkage or personal information are being reused after they get to a service provider, that their information have been reused without their own consent. So we have been investigating this, and we think that is something important. Apart from that, better orientation, education, and also we partnered with our own national orientation agency, because they go to all the nooks and crannies, they talk the local language and also the culture to really improve the services that we have. And finally, going forward, of course, enhance biometrics in the mobile app, and we have this facial coming to pension, as we have one of our state, Kaduna State, use case, and also high level of assurance that is using an integrity index. As the chairman mentioned, we are also implementing the W3C decentralized ID framework. I want to say thank you for your attention. And *346# is for those that don't have mobile app to utilize to verify. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. But before I let you get off the stage, and as a reward for the fact that you finished with 2 minutes to spare, I want to put the progress of Nigeria in context. When Nigeria first started attending the ID4AFRICA annual meeting, it was the second year when the movement had started. Their national database had 7 million people in it. Can you tell us, DG Aziz, where is going to be the size of your database this week?
Well, this week, because we have our dear President Muhammadu Buhari is handing over by 29, so we are planning to give him a parting gift of 100 million registered Nigerians.
This is progress. 100 million, from 7 to 100 million. So this is the journey that we would like to see everywhere in Africa, and Nigeria has been at the forefront of that type of progress. So congratulations,
Thank you, Chairman.
DG Aziz. Thank you very much for the wonderful news you've shared with us. And then tomorrow you will hear much more details about this fascinating process of tokenization, which is in fact invented first, this type of tokenization, invented first in Africa and in Nigeria. Thank you very much. So we are going to continue. Like I mentioned, Nadra wasn't able to be with us, the DG of Nadra, but we have with us Mr. Shehryar Ajmal Khan, Head of Business Development for Nadra. Please take the stage. We're going to hear the Pakistan story now. Thank you. And I hope you can beat Nigeria by finishing also 2 minutes ahead. Yes.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Shehryar. I'm from Nadra, Pakistan. Mr. Malik has already sent his apologies for not being able to attend. He was taken ill at the last moment. But I'll be telling you about the National ID program of Pakistan, which started in 1973, and it digitalized in the year 2000. And in the last 23 years, we have gone through many evolutions, which has in turn sort of stimulated a digital transformation journey for the government structure, essentially moving them towards an e-governance sector. And we'll talk about the cutting-edge digital public goods that are based on digital ID in Pakistan. In terms of numbers, we have about 800 registration centers, all connected to a central system. We run 3 data centers. 13 of these centers we have designed as mega centers. These are like 50 counters in a single area and working 24/7 in populous urban cities of Pakistan. We have a fairly large mobile registration units as well, from vans to bikes to man packs, reaching out population everywhere they can. And with a population of 250 million people, we are processing 136,000 applications per day, processing, applying, and printing and delivering per day. Pakistan's current state of ID system is that we have a universal coverage. People can walk into any of these Nadra centers. There's one in every sub-county, we can say that, in Pakistan. We've got a detailed mobile registration units. We have Himalayas to the mountains, so where technology and infrastructure is not available, vans go in. Where even roads are not available, like people living up in the mountains, we have man packs, so people are reaching out. For our international citizens living abroad, our diaspora, we have an online system portal available where they can apply online and get an ID completely online. And for our latest tech generation, we have recently launched a mobile registration app. Any good ID platform needs to have a very strong deduplication system. We have a multi-biometric system in Pakistan with a processing capacity of 55 million matches per second. And we have recently introduced Iris, which has been rolled out to about 800 of these registration touch points. We have an all-inclusive registration program in Pakistan. We register everybody, but we give a citizen ID card to a citizen, an overseas card which grant them access, visa-free access. It's really useful for dual nationals who don't have to get a visa every time they come back to Pakistan. We give a refugee card, people with special needs, and so on. So this, in turn, has shown that Pakistan's ID system has actually become a single version of truth, where a very strong eKYC platform has been rolled out, and almost all public services are based on that. Since we not only register people, we register people as a family as well. And we've got a very strong family-based registration system. It's a non-intrusive system. People only apply for their ID card, but we build a very strong family linkage at the back. Because places where biometrics fail, everybody has two identities. You as an individual and you as somebody's child or somebody's brother, sister, daughter. So we have used this family linkage in such a way that recently in Pakistan now, our family tree is the basis of legal succession. It's reduced the court cases and the court load by 30% significantly. So in Pakistan, your travel document, your ID card is your immunization registry, it's your health card, it's your legal inheritance and everything. So we learned that identity actually enables sustainable development. And it caters for multiple SDGs of the UN on that. And Nadra Pakistan was able to roll out a large number of SDGs and sustainable and digital public goods on that, like passports, immunization system, interventions in health, subsidy programs, social protection, and so on. And in lieu of that, in the last 23 years, Nadra has also acted as a digital transformation agency for the government of Pakistan. While each agency has their own mandate and ownership of the data, it's been designed in such a way that it's based on ID. So every time we did another digital transformation, the time reduced to achieve that digital transformation. And we'll talk about a little bit of that soon. And we came up, eventually formulated our ID stack, the Pakistan ID stack. And we realized if you have the core and foundation strong, which is the center of it is the national ID, your census, your civil registration, then it is very easy to roll out digital public goods like your e-passports, immunization, social protection registries, subsidy programs. In Pakistan, if you apply for a national ID card and you're approved, you automatically becomes part of the electoral list. You don't have to apply separately to become a voter. It's integrated in such a manner on that. So refugee ID documents, and obviously the digital economy really picks up very quickly. So we'll talk about a few of the digital public goods that we recently rolled out. A few of them, how quickly we did, something that is notable in terms of the Pakistan story on that. So our national ID program, since it's been there for quite some time and it's going through a continuous evolution, and we have a very strong eKYC platform. The online platform have received over 5 million applications from 195 countries. People apply from the comfort of their home, sitting in US, UK, almost all over the world, and they receive the ID documents that they require either online, some of them are online, and or at their home in that country. And recently we rolled out a complete registration mobile app. This essentially replaces almost 80% of all application needs completely online. It's like a registration center on a mobile phone. I'll show you a small demo of that. So it's a complete registration process of our latest mobile registration app. It's already received almost 2 million downloads. It's very popular with our diaspora and now with the new generation on that. So one of the important elements of having to issue ID online is that you should be able to biometrically identify the person. That is the best form of that. So the system acquires a ICAO-compliant photograph, does a live one-to-one match online for people who are already registered with Nadra. It uses the front camera of the phone for fingerprint verification. And up till now, we've had a lot of success with that, with almost 50,000 applications processed completely with this application on that. This application also works with our website, where people use it for biometrics only on that. And then everything is obviously consent-based. There are some processes in Pakistan where somebody has to attest your credibility, and that person gets an SMS, he gives you the OTP, and then you get a consent-based attestation. We've also integrated an AI-based document verification system, just a little bit of tools to help you out while you are filling out your application for especially breeder documents. So if the application has asked for a driver's license and you put up any other card, it will identify and say it's not a driver's license on that. So it receives the complete payment online, it processes online, and the complete application package, like a registration office in your palm. That is the latest mobile app that we have rolled out. Talking about our eKYC. Now in Pakistan, your one national ID number, I will not even say card, your digital ID number that you have is your gateway to almost all government services. Over 800 organizations, government departments with thousands of touch points are doing eKYC every day, and that has been regulated by law as well. I mean, if you want a SIM card, you want a bank account, you want to own property, your health benefits, and everything is linked to the national ID. And it becomes seamless for the citizen at times. This is sort of a service delivery highway where, as I explained earlier, citizens get citizen card, a refugee get refugee card. So you can just enable and disable what card types have which kind of services allowed in Pakistan on that. So we have a host of services on our eKYC platform for different industries as well, even for remittance. And we're processing about 1.5 million applications per day. Obviously, with fingerprints come, with such a large eKYC platform comes the matter of data privacy and all of that. The whole eKYC platform is governed by our consent management system. We call it Ijazat for every transaction that needs to happen. And obviously, biometrics is one of the way of having consent, but then there are people who do not have biometrics, or there are verifications that do not require biometrics for an eKYC or verification. For that, we have we send an OTP to the citizen on their registered mobile phone number. It's a secure registration process for the mobile phone number while they're applying for their ID whenever they did. And once that is in place, only then these people on that. But we understand inclusivity. There will always be people who fall through the cracks. There will be people who will not have fingerprints, especially people, senior citizens do not have fingerprints. You might not be able to rely on face altogether. And yes, Iris is picking up on that. But then there'll be people who would never use a mobile phone. There are still people who would prefer to apply for registration online, but then there'll be people who would always prefer going into a center. So the online does not take care, caters for the people who want to go to a center on that. So for verification as well, there are always people who fall through the cracks, but you cannot deny them your e-governance services. So at Pakistan, so if the fingerprint fails, the person you choose not to carry a mobile phone, which is, it's a choice. So how do you get his consent? So based on our data that we have and the family linkages that we created, we have a DBT model where we generate secret questions that only that person can answer. It's a machine learning based algorithm. So we launched this as a pilot for our pensioners who had the most problems, because in Pakistan, the complete banking industry is biometric based. All eKYC and verification by the National ID Authority, NADRA. So these pensioners were having trouble in verifying through fingerprints or having an OTP or do not understand technology. So we've launched out a system for them that's called Tasdeeq in our language. It's specifically for senior citizens, and then we'll launch it out for any other group that falls between these cracks. Very quickly, we're also launching eKYC services for the private sector now, and we are opening it up industry-wise. We're hoping that they would create applications for the general public. It will stimulate entrepreneurship, facilitate digital economy, create jobs, and overall profits for these industries as well. It's a big initiative. It's already been launched. We are just rolling it out industry-wise. Our social protection system is completely based on the national identity, and we've grouped people in families, so our social grants go family-wise. So, and that actually enabled us to have, to reach out to marginalized groups in the past as well. So since we have a family-based ID system and a family-based social protection system as well, so the grants, there was a time in Pakistan that women registration was not at par with men registration. They would never leave the house, so they would not that. So we deployed different strategies when you're connected with different systems. And one of them was that in a family, the social protection grant would go to the woman. So then they scrambled to get registered with the ID card, and that registration went up. Our health insurance is a very interesting system. It connects with the existing DPDs and was developed very quickly because at one point it connects with the national ID, social protection database, the insurance companies, and the medical paraphernalia like hospitals. So it all works together. Almost all of Pakistan is covered. It's a cardless scheme. Your ID card is your national health insurance. It's a cashless medical scheme that we have. The national immunization system, when COVID struck us, we did not have an immunization registry. But with the amount of DPGs we already had, the system they already praised, we rolled out an immunization registry in 3 days on that. One app for the vaccinated medical people because they were already on the National Health Insurance Program, one app for the citizens carrying their pass. And now we have moved on polio and yellow fever on it, and we plan to move on the child immunization to it as well. We rolled out, COVID was also a disaster for people, people who were daily wagers. We rolled out a compensation program on that. The same architecture is currently being used for all disasters in Pakistan. We were struck by floods last year, and the same architecture that we used for COVID to roll out immediate relief in terms of cash, we have used the same one on that. Thank you very much. My regards from the chairman. There's a few publications on that.
Thank you. Thank you very much, and congratulations for all the progress that you have been making. It's very clear that identity in Pakistan has been very transformative. Thank you very much. We're going to continue to hear perspectives now, insights and perspectives on identity verification from Uganda, and with us is Rosemary Kisimbo. She is our ambassador, and she is the Director General of the National Identity Registration Authority of Uganda. Rosemary, the stage is yours. Thank you.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. All protocol is observed. Thank you, Dr. Atick, for the insights we learned from these meetings, and for the team from ID4AFRICA. The presentation can start. Thank you. We have 26.5 million Ugandans registered with the national identification numbers, which is 60.1% of our population. The mass enrollment exercise that we will endeavor to start by the end of this year is targeting the 17.2 that are unregistered. There is an aggressive drive to increase birth registration for under ones to at least 80% in the next 2 years. The reason for this summary is, The reason for this summary is in Uganda we started with mass enrollment, and it was something that has been picked up across Africa. But I would like to say that mass enrollment without identification at birth, and I'm careful to not use the word registration because many countries are doing registration at birth, but without identification at birth, you keep chasing the numbers. So what are the types of verification we have in Uganda? We have system-to-system verification, which is the primary form of verification, and we have manual verification via written letters or court orders. So they have the option for the system-to-system, but sometimes they prefer the manual identification. An entity external to NIRA, we share an API, they send requests, and we say yes or no. All verification attracts fees, except when it's government. The other type of verification we have is verification with consent, where no personal identification is shared. This is important for us to note. There is a verification we do whereby you send data, a third party sends data. We don't add anything, we simply say yes or no. So we don't know whether you have consent or not. You've sent us something. If it's right, we say yes. If it's wrong, we say no. Even if there's a comma spelling or a hyphen, we simply say no. Because the assumption is that you should have the proper details if someone is before you. The second one is verify with consent. And that one, we actually share details, even biometrics where requested, that have been consented to by the person. Another kind of verification we have is individual. For some reason, sometimes people are required to prove their own identity, and they have to take letters from the organization to say they are who they are. And the last one is the update of information. We are a custodian or the data controller for personal data, but there are aspects about personal data that are held by other government entities, and we allow them from time to time to update us with the most accurate information about our people who they hold. I will concentrate a bit on this slide to help you understand. The population of Uganda is anything between 42 to 45 million. I will not comment in detail about that because we have 39% of our persons not registered. So, to say that we have had 106 million verifications means that some records have been verified more than 4 times. So that shows you the extent to which digital identity is a public infrastructure. I don't think 106 million trucks have gone on Ugandan roads, but 106 million verifications have happened with the identity, with identity organization. And I must say that for this data, we are not even looking at individual verification. We are simply looking at records verified by telecoms, government, banks, and the banking KYC. We differentiated that from the one where you gave consent and we give data, and that's 59 million. It's much less, where we require strict, detailed consent for us to give. In the first case, we just verify. In the second case, we give with the consent of the person. It was also important to note that we have 78 institutions with system-to-system interactions. What factors have supported growth and verification? It's promotion and demand and use in in service delivery. There are persons who have, when different government entities begin to say, give us your national ID or give us your national ID number, it creates demand. It creates demand, and when it creates demand, it increases identification and increases registration. The other important point to note is the enabling legal environment. There are several factors in law and policy that insist on presenting your credentials verified to certain entities. Then there is the technology. 106 million would not be possible without technology. And lastly, there is the multiple ways. You can come in, you can print off the net, you can do it system to system. I thought we would give a brief example of what does it take to do enrolling entities for verification. You make a request in writing, a discussion is held, an MOU is signed, an entity is then put on the test environment, and then the rest is the communication begins, and so does the billing. I know we've been guided that it should not be a source of revenue, but for now it is. Examples of the use of the demand-driven use of ID. For you to get a job in government, who is the largest employer, you need to be registered and identified. For voting, for passport control, for bank accounts, for insurance, for purchase of land, for trust fund registration, for pension and social security, for consumer and credit transactions, each of those will require you to present your ID and have it verified, whether online or in person. I must emphasize that demand-driven is, demand creates supply and both ways. So it's, one reinforces the other, and at the end they reinforce each other. The other one is examples of enabling causes of legal. We say NERA's obligation, it's in Section 5 of our Act. We are required to verify and authenticate information. Meaning if an entity comes, we don't have the liberty to say no or maybe. If they present all the documentation they are required to present, we are required to help them verify and authenticate information. Furthermore, the law defines use and use cases in a way that creates demand. And lastly, it allows persons to access their own data. One thing I didn't include in the slide, which I should talk about, is that we have a data protection office that has also encouraged verification, and I will guide. When a person is sure that the authority is accountable to somebody else on the way they handle their personal data, it builds confidence. Thank you very much.
Rosemary, I want to congratulate you. The fact is, you haven't been in this position for 2 years yet, and you've done enormous amount of progress and change. So thank you very much for this. Okay, so last but not least, we are happy to move to the world, another part of the world, to Indonesia, to hear the insights from Dr. Teguh Setiabudi, who's the Director General of the Population Civil Registration, Ministry of Home Affairs. Welcome, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Dr. Teguh Setiabudi, MPD, the Director General of Population and Registration, also known as Dukcapil, as the part of the Ministry of Affairs, Republic of Indonesia. On behalf of the Indonesian government, I would like to give my gratitude to distinguished Dr. Joseph Atick, Executive Chairman, ID4AFRICA, to inviting me the experience of Indonesia on hopefully to build strong cooperation with African countries. I would like to briefly introduce our beloved country, the unitary state of the Republic of Indonesia. Indonesia is an archipelagic country with more than 17,000 islands, located between the two continents of Asia and Australia, and the Indian and the Pacific Ocean. If the map of Indonesia is placed on a map of Europe, it will cover many countries in Europe. And if on the map of the USA, it will almost cover the landmass of mainland. The capital city is Jakarta, and we have 38 provinces and 514 districts or cities. Our population is more than 277 million people, which is the fourth largest after India, China, and United States. We have various ethnic and religious groups, as well as more than 700 local languages. In addition to our national language is Bahasa Indonesia. In other words, Indonesia is diverse, large, complex, which creates challenges for conducting, population, and civil registration. Thanks to our strong population and civil registration, Dukcapil can provide comprehensive demographic information about our country. The highest population is on the of Java, which reaches 50%. We also inform you that Indonesia has a population of more males than females, and our production age population is much higher than the non-productive age group. I'm proud to report the coverage of the population eligible for biometric registration for the national identity cards, and also known as electronic key TP, is 99.37%, more than 199 million people. Indonesia is used national identification number, or NIK, as a single identity number which is regulated under of Law Number 24 of 2013, concerning amendment to Law Number 23 of 2006, concerning population administration. The NIK is issued about registration, and it acts as an access key and is integrated with passport, social security cards, driving licenses, phone number, tax ID, social assistance, marriage book, and so on. Population data is not only used for population and civil registration matter, but is now widely used by many institutions for various purposes. To date, the number of user institutions, including national and local government agencies and businesses that are utilizing population, is nearly 6,000. These users have conducted 11.5 billion verification using the NIK. Yes, that is billions. Our target user are mobile network operator for SIM card registration, the Ministry of Social Affairs and Social Security agencies, and banks. One on the left, you will see the number of new user institutions every year since 2013. As you can see, there was increase since 2017. Demand for population data utilization has increased because the introduction of SIM card registration and the expansion of financial service and social protection. In 2021, we saw an even bigger increase because of the COVID pandemic, as more services became digital. On the right, you will see that we offer the kinds of verification services, NIK verification, card reader, and fish verification. All of this can be used for electronic Know Your Customer, or EKYC. It has been a long process for many years to reach this point. Before 1995, our processes were manual. In 2006, we created a new law on this, accompanied by development of our digital population administration information system. In 2006, Dukcapil introduced biometric recording for all Indonesian residents, aged over 17 years, and finally, starting in 2019. Since 2019, we have implemented in the Dukcapil Go Digital program to deliver innovation for our internal and external services, such as digitally signed civil registration document and a digital identity application. An important development was the Centralized Population Administration Information System, also known SIAK Terpusat. SIAK Terpusat, or Centralized Population Administration Information System, synchronize the population database in more than 500 districts and cities, allowing us to have real-time population data, which is important for user institution. In addition, Dukcapil are proud to be certified according to the Information Security Management System standard, that improve the trust and confidence that Indonesian and user institutions have in our system and organization. To improve the efficiency and utility of population document, Dukcapil has introduced several innovations. First, this document can now be asked through kiosk called Anjungan Dukcapil Mandiri Machine, as well as soft copies via email. Second, to increase security and reduce costs, Dukcapil changed from physical security feature and wet signature on the paper or to digital signature in a QR code, which can be easily verified. The document can now print on simple paper. Dukcapil's latest innovation is our digital identity or digital ID application, which is called Identitas Kependudukan Digital or IKD. Through the digital ID, Dukcapil plans to allow Indonesian and resident to option to transition from physical population document to digital version. The IKD application will also act as a digital wallet to store other documents as a single sign on the access online public and private sector services and a tool to consent to data sharing. The implementation of digital ID is taking place in stages, starting from internal implementation within the central government officer to local government officer. All this time, we are onboarding students to Dukcapil goes to campus. As of May 17 this year, 2023, the number of users has reached more than 2.6 million. The target for this year, also we began offering the IKD to all Indonesians who have smartphone, is 25% of population eligible for biometric recording, which is 50 million people. We are currently working with a minister to integrate to IKD into the digital public service mall or digital PSM. Indonesian and resident can use the IKD to do an e-KYC in order to create an account digital PSM and to access transactional services from many government. As mentioned earlier, our IKD will be developed into a data sharing hub system between institutions. Indonesian and resident will be able to give consent for the use of their personal data when performing services online in line with the new personal data protection law that was passed last year. As you will notice, Dukcapil is undertaking an ambitious digital transformation program to improve the life and livelihoods of Indonesia and accelerate inclusive economic growth. We have partnered with the World Bank for technical and financial assistance for a new digital ID project for 250 million US dollar, which was approved by the World Bank Board, which was approved by the World Bank Board on May 12th in this year, 2023. As you can see on the slide, the project has 5 components. The will further improve population and civil registration and institutional capacity through innovation for inclusion and efficiency. The project will build digital public infrastructure and integrate this into service, including a new identity verification and e-KYC platform, upgrades to the IKD application to improve user experience, security, and scalability, a data exchange platform for the whole of government. Accompanying this will be a modernized data infrastructure, automation, and strengthen personal data protection and cyber security. We expect all of Indonesia to benefit from this program. Our goals are, no matter where an Indonesian is our country or indeed anywhere in the world, if they have an internet connection, they should be able to transact easily and securely with the government and businesses. 2, government agencies and businesses should be able to, with new and innovation product and services on top. We want Indonesia to continue to lead the way in building a dynamic digital economy. As we proceed in this journey, we look forward to the opportunity to collaborate with other countries to share experience and lessons. Finally, because we must not forget that our service are about people, we also want to proudly inform you that our call center called Hello Dukcapil help people who have difficulty using national identity number or NIK in public services. Once again, I would like to thank you, the distinguished ladies and gentlemen, for having me today and looking forward to having an engaging conversation and discuss with me, all of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. In fact, I want to underline one thing on page 4. Perhaps you moved very quickly on it, but you have done 11 billion verifications so far. 11.5 billion. So, is that an accomplishment or what?
Yes.
Fantastic, fantastic. You could see the transformative power of digital identity. So thank you for being with us. We have just short period of time to take 1 or 2 questions, but in general, if you have questions, since we are an augmented meeting, you can submit them livecasts at ID4Africa.com, and when the second episode coming up, June 7th, we will bring in the people who received a lot of questions or the experts who will relate to your questions. So, any quick questions? Please, no long comments, just very pointed questions. Raise your hand. I know everybody's hungry, and we have a wonderful chef who has prepared something for all of us. So please, very briefly and very pointedly. Anybody I can see, I can call on?
S'il vous plaît.
Yes, yes, please.
Merci, docteur. Merci à tous ces intervenants qui ont partagé avec nous ces belles expériences.
Actually, Steph, could you please come on board, because not everybody has the headphones. I need a translator to do consequential translation. Unless everybody's got a headset now. Can you come on stage, please, and just speak slowly. Not everybody has the headset, okay? Okay.
Donc, merci, docteur. Je voudrais féliciter et remercier tous les intervenants avec ces riches expériences qui ont.
They are rich experience with us.
Ma question concerne l'utilisation des informations dans le cadre de la digitalisation. Tant qu'on est au niveau des dispositifs avec des cartes, on a ces personnes-là qui demandent les services avec des cartes. Et quand on est dans la digitalisation, les choses se simplifient parce qu'il y a un blocage qui n'a pas été cité, c'est la distribution des cartes, qui est un blocage qui est levé avec la digitalisation.
Okay, so as it relates to digitalization, there's one thing that wasn't stated, and it has to do with the blockage as it relates to the distribution of cards.
So the issue is that if the card is the platform upon which we link services and the distribution of cards is a challenge, continue.
Continuez.
Dans le cas de la digitalisation, quand la personne fait une demande, c'est simple. Mais quand, tout à l'heure on a vu dans les exemples du Ghana et du Nigeria, on a également des services privés qui peuvent solliciter ces personnes-là et donc ces services-là ont besoin d'un consentement de la personne. Donc la question que je me pose dans un contexte comme le nôtre, où on a parfois des taux d'analphabétisme qui sont élevés, comment ça se passe? J'ai compris qu'avec le Ghana, on a les langues locales qui sont utilisées. Est-ce que ça se limite à des consentements vocaux? Comment ça se passe? Parce que c'est vraiment intéressant d'aller vers la digitalisation, ça nous lève un vrai blocage que nous rencontrons aujourd'hui. Merci.
So she raises an issue related to how consent is given in the identity verification context, which obviously is a very complex matter because it depends on what channel you're using. If you're using a card and you're presenting it, you consent because you're giving it. But if you're online or a mobile app, clearly there has been many different speakers that have given us basically exactly at what point the consent passes. So there has to be a notification of the citizen or the individual through a card or through the mobile app or through the online. So I'd like to redirect. This is the question that's being asked. How is consent management being done? So I'd like to redirect it to the panel and ask if anybody would like to address the question of consent. Yes, please. And DG, you would like to also address it? Okay, so we'll have Professor Atafua and then DG Aziz. And then we'll release you for food.
Thank you very much. Very interesting question. Consent is signified by your presenting yourself at the bank or at the telco and indicating that you want to access the service. So that's number one. Number two, when you administer your finger to the device, you are consenting that the data, your personal data be verified by NIA, and it is transmitted to the backend system. The verification system happens, and feedback is given in 300th of a second. So consent is automatic in those circumstances. Where there is where there is connectivity, then that's instant. Where there is no data connectivity, I spoke about the various ways in which verification is conducted, and therefore also how consent is administered. And we are also regulated by a data protection authority or agency to which we are responsible. But there was also another dimension to the question which had to do with registration and local language and all of that. Our registration or enrollment processes were first and foremost by mass registration. And we made sure that the registration officials doing the interviews to ascertain citizenship or establish identity were locals who speak the local language and who are able to interview the people to establish the veracity of their claims to Ghanaianness or whatever their foreign identity may be. And those registrations that are taking place at our regional and district offices all across the country, which are permanent, not registration centers. The staff there also speak the local languages and are able to provide a proper engagement and context.
So there is an informed consent to giving their data at enrollment time because they're speaking their language, they're explaining what needs to be done.
Yes, for purposes of the enrollment, but that doesn't necessarily automatically mean.
Of course, for verification.
For verification.
Exactly. DJ Aziz.
All right. Well, thank you very much. Just like Chairman talked about, it depends on which channel. And from what I've heard, the lady talked about challenges in distribution of cards. And also that is why I mentioned that the banks have been used to this card distribution. And usually you go to them, you go to the branch and collect the card. And then recently, there's always a two-factor authentication for every service. Before even your bank account is deducted, they will send you an OTP, one-time password, so that you can confirm that you wanted to do that. But when it comes to this literacy, again, we have noticed that in the about year 2000, when the general GSM, the mobile phone revolution came in, a lot of people were condemning, saying that my grandmother in the village will not be able to use that. But we have seen the same people that bought the phone and took it to the grandmother and taught them how to, when you want to call Aziz or Bio or Atick, this is what you do. And the grandmother is using the phone. So the literacy is there, but it's utilization. As much as we use the digital services, then people will get used to it. After all, we adapt very quickly to new system. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Okay, so obviously there are lots and lots of questions. You've heard basically 6 director generals talk about progress that they have made, and you must admit that this progress has been phenomenal. Year over year, we see adoption accelerating. Number of services that are being enabled by identity and digital identity is going up exponentially. The number of verifications going up exponentially in some countries. So we are making progress. Together, we are making the invisibles visible, and thanks to the identity authorities and their leaderships, they are making a difference in the digital economies and in the rights and responsibilities of people. So we are going to continue with a different approach this afternoon. We're going to start with an understanding of the lessons learned from the largest identity system in the world, which is Aadhaar, with a fire chat conversation I will have with somebody who headed a research team that did a study. Then we are going to have spotlights, different countries, on how they used and what were the challenges and what were the issues. Then later, we are going to talk about the US identity model and the European identity model through federation and decentralization. I know it's going to be a tough day, but trust me, it will be a rewarding day. In the meantime, I invite you to be our guests and have lunch on the first floor. As you exit to the right, go to the right once more. The stairs, it's on your left. You will be served lunch. But please promise to come back at 3 o'clock because we start on time and we stay on time. Thank you so much. Thank you. Please thank the Director Generals. Thank you. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
PG, thank you.
Africa arise, Africa arise, Africa arise.